Hours after I gave birth alone, my mom messaged, "Your sister's kids are expecting new phones for their birthday. Send $2,000. I didn't respond. A week later, I came home, and my mom walked in and shouted, "How could you?" I got really angry, and my husband was holding my hand when the contractions started, and then his phone rang. His father had collapsed at a job site in Tucson, and just like that, Derek was gone. 37 weeks pregnant, standing in our kitchen in Columbus, Ohio, watching his taillights disappear down the street at 11 at night. He kept saying, "I'll be back before the baby comes. Caroline." I promise. But here's the thing about promises and babies. Neither one cares about your schedule. And you know who else didn't care? My mother. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. My name is Caroline. I'm 26, and I grew up in a family where I was basically the ATM with a heartbeat. I have an older sister, Brenda, who's 31 and has 3 kids. And somehow, every single financial emergency in Brenda's life became my problem. New school shoes? Call Caroline? Car payments late? Caroline will cover it. And standing behind every single one of those requests, like a general commanding her troops, was my mother, Diane. Now, don't get me wrong. I love my mother. Or at least I love the idea of what a mother should be. But Diane had decided a long time ago that Brenda was the golden child, and I was the workhorse. Brenda got pregnant at 19, dropped out of community college, and my mom treated her like she'd won a Nobel Prize. I put myself through school, got a decent job at an insurance firm, married a good man, and somehow I was still the one who needed to do more for this family. You ever have someone in your life like that? Someone who just drains you and then blames you for being empty? So Derek left for Tucson on a Tuesday night. His dad, Earl, had a heart episode on a construction site. I told Derek to go. Of course I told him to go. What kind of wife would I be? Earl needed him. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't terrified. First baby. Alone in a house that suddenly felt way too big and way too quiet. Wednesday passed. Thursday passed. Derek called every few hours. Earl was in the ICU, stable but not great. Derek sounded wrecked. I told him everything was fine. Everything was not fine. My back was killing me. I couldn't sleep. And I was eating cereal for every meal because standing long enough to cook felt like running a marathon. Then, Friday morning hit. 5:15 a.m. My water broke in bed, and I just lay there for a second, staring at the ceiling, thinking, of course this is happening right now. I called Derek first. He didn't pick up. Time difference, hospital exhaustion, I don't know. I called him 3 more times. Nothing. So I did what I had to do. I called my neighbor Patty, this wonderful 60-year-old woman who brought me banana bread when we moved in. Patty drove me to Riverside Methodist in her bathrobe and slippers. Bless her heart, doing 45 inches of 35 while telling me to breathe. Now, here's where I need to tell you about one more person. My grandmother, my dad's mom, Nana Ruth. 81 years old, lives in Dayton, sharp as a tack, and the only person in my family who ever made me feel like I was enough. When my dad passed away 6 years ago, Nana Ruth became my anchor. She couldn't drive to Columbus anymore, but she called me every single Sunday without fail. She knew about Derek leaving for Tucson. She knew I was nervous. And at 6:30 that Friday morning, while I was being wheeled into labor and delivery, my phone buzzed with a text from Nana Ruth. I've been praying since 5. You've got this, baby girl. I cried right there in the wheelchair. I just cried. Labor was 14 hours. 14 hours, you guys. No epidural for the first 9, because by the time I wanted one, things were moving too fast. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Patty stayed in the waiting room for 7 of those hours until I told a nurse to send her home. And Derek finally called back around hour 6. He was sobbing. He felt horrible. His dad was being moved out of the ICU, and he was trying to get a flight back. But everything was booked, or had crazy layovers. I told him it was okay. I told him I was strong. And honestly, in that moment, pushing through contraction after contraction with nobody holding my hand, I realized I actually was strong. Stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. At 7:48 p.m. on that Friday, my daughter was born. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with Derek's dark hair and my stubborn chin. I named her Lily, because when I was little, Nana Ruth had a garden full of lilies, and she used to tell me they were the toughest flowers. They come back every single year, no matter what. I held Lily against my chest, and I felt like the whole world could burn down around me, and it wouldn't matter. I had her. She was here. We made it. Derek saw Lily for the first time over video call. He was sitting in a hospital hallway in Tucson, crying so hard he could barely talk. He kept saying, "She's perfect. You're perfect." I'm so sorry. And I believed him. That man loved us. He was just torn between 2 emergencies, and I couldn't fault him for that. Now, here's where the story turns. Are you ready? Because I wasn't. 3 hours after I gave birth. 3 hours. I'm lying in my hospital bed, Lily asleep on my chest, my body feeling like it got hit by a bus, and my phone lights up. It's a text from my mother. From Diane. Do you want to know what it said? Because when I tell you, you're going to react the same way I did. It said, "Brenda's kids are expecting new phones for their birthday next month. Can you send $2,000? They've been talking about it all week." That's it. That was the message. No, how are you? No? Did the baby come? No. Are you okay? $2,000 for phones. For my sister's kids. 3 hours after I gave birth alone. I stared at that message for a long time. And you know what I did? Absolutely nothing. I didn't respond. I turned my phone over. I kissed the top of Lily's head. And I closed my eyes. Can you believe that? Honestly, tell me, what would you have done? But that silence, that was the match that lit the fuse. Because my mother is not a woman who handles being ignored well. And what she did when I came home from the hospital a week later, that's when everything really exploded. My mother showed up at my door. No warning, no call, she just walked in. She still had a spare key from when we first moved in, which, yes, I know. I should have changed those locks ages ago. I was sitting on the couch, Lily in my arms, still in that foggy haze of no sleep and new motherhood. And Diane walked through my front door, stood in my living room, and the very first words out of her mouth were, "How could you? How could you ignore your own family when they needed you?" Not, "Let me see my granddaughter." Not, "How was the birth?" How could you? Something inside me just snapped. I'm not proud of what happened next. But maybe I am. I honestly still don't know. But I'm going to tell you exactly what I did. Because I promised myself I'd be honest in sharing this story. I put Lily down gently in her bassinet. I stood up. My legs were shaking. Whether from exhaustion or anger, I still couldn't tell you. And I walked right up to my mother, looked her dead in the eyes, and I slapped her across the face. I know. Before you judge me, just hear me out. 26 years. 26 years of being second place, of being the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who writes the checks and never gets a thank you. 26 years of watching Brenda get praised for doing the bare minimum while I worked myself to the bone. And this woman couldn't even acknowledge that her younger daughter just brought a life into this world alone. The slap wasn't hard. It wasn't violent, but it was loud. And the look on my mother's face, I will never forget it, as long as I live. She just stood there, her hand on her cheek, mouth open like the universe had glitched. And then she said, "You hit me. You actually hit me." And I said, "And you actually forgot I exist. So I guess we're both surprised. Do you think I was wrong for that?" Because some days I think I was. And some days, I think it was 26 years overdue. You tell me. Diane left. She didn't slam the door. She just walked out like a ghost. And I stood there shaking, holding on to the kitchen counter. And I called the only person I wanted to talk to, Nana Ruth. Nana Ruth picked up on the first ring like she always does, and I told her everything. The text. The slap. All of it. And you know what Nana Ruth said? She was quiet for a second, and then she said, "Well, Caroline, I don't condone hitting, but I've been waiting for you to stand up for yourself for about 15 years. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm shocked. That woman, I swear she's the only reason I didn't completely fall apart. But here's what I didn't expect. What I didn't see coming. Because while I thought the hardest part was over, my mother was just getting started. And the stress that was building it was about to send me somewhere I never thought I'd end up. I'll tell you what happened next. Because this is the part that almost broke me. And it involves a phone call from Brenda that made my mother's text look like a love letter. Stay with me. So, after the slap, my mother went silent. And if you think that was peaceful, you don't know Diane. Her silence isn't retreat. It's reloading. 4 days of nothing. Just me and Lily. Alone, learning each other. Derek still in Tucson with Earl. Nana Ruth calling every day, sneaking in her real questions between asking about Lily. Are you eating, Caroline? Did you sleep? I'd dodge. She'd let me. Nana Ruth always knows when to push and when to just be there. Then Brenda called. My sister isn't cruel on purpose. She's just completely blind to the fact that other people have feelings. Mom raised her that way. Brenda never had to think about anyone because Diane handled it all, and I funded what Diane couldn't. Brenda's first words weren't congratulations. They were, "Mom told me what you did." I said, "Good." Old Caroline would have apologized. But old Caroline gave birth alone and got a bill 3 hours later. Old Caroline is retired. Brenda went off. About how Mom does everything for me. How ungrateful I am. I said, "Brenda, Mom's first message after I gave birth alone was asking for $2,000 for your kids' phones." And Brenda said, and I swear on my life, "Well, the kids really do need new phones, Caroline." That hollow laugh came out of me. You know the one, where your soul briefly leaves your body. I hung up without another word. Then, because I apparently love punishment, I called Diane. Maybe I thought the right words would finally get through. She answered with, "I hope you're calling to apologize." I tried explaining. The birth, the loneliness, the text. She said, "Your sister's children are family too. Or have you forgotten?" I exploded. Not controlled anger. The messy kind. Crying, yelling, voice breaking. I said things I'd buried for years. That she never showed up for me. That Dad was the only parent who loved me equally. And when he died, I lost my only real parent. She said, "That's the most ungrateful thing you've ever said to me." I sat on the kitchen floor and cried until I couldn't breathe. And then the text started. Not apologies. Things like, "Brenda is devastated you hung up on her." And, "Your nieces think Aunt Caroline doesn't love them anymore." Each one a little knife in my chest. I know what you're thinking. Block her. And you're right. But when it's your mom, there's this stupid hope that the next message might finally be an apology. It never was. Stress and a postpartum body don't mix. Nobody warned me about that. 8 days after Lily was born, I was changing her diaper, and the room just tilted sideways. Vision went spotty. One thought, "Do not drop this baby." I got Lily into the crib. Then I hit the floor. When I came to, I crawled to my phone and called Patty. 4 minutes later, she was there, took one look, and said, "Hospital. Now." Blood pressure through the roof. Severely dehydrated. Postpartum complications worsened by extreme stress. Dr. Patel told me straight. Whatever is causing this stress needs to stop today. And Derek, he finally got on a plane, called his brother Wade to handle Earl, and caught the red eye. When he walked into my hospital room at 6 a.m., unshaven and wrecked. I just broke down. The kind of crying you do when someone finally shows up, and you can stop pretending you're okay. I told him everything, every detail, and I watched something shift behind his eyes. Something go hard. He said quietly, "This is done, Caroline." While I slept, he called a real estate agent, started looking at places in Cincinnati 2 hours south, close to Nana Ruth in Dayton, far enough that Diane couldn't just walk through our front door anymore. He said, "I want us to live somewhere your phone doesn't make you sick." I thought about Nana Ruth's lilies, how they always come back. But sometimes, even lilies need new soil. I said yes, but leaving wasn't going to be quiet. My mother found out I was in the hospital, and what she did next, honestly, I still can't believe it, changed everything between us. Do you think Derek was right to make that decision? Some might call it controlling. I call it the first time someone loved me enough to take the wheel when I was too exhausted to steer. What do you think? I'll tell you the rest very soon. So, I'm in a hospital bed, finally sleeping. Derek in the chair with Lily on his chest. And the door opens. Diane. She walked in, saw me hooked up to IVs, saw Derek holding Lily for the first time and said, "So now you're in the hospital. Is this the attention you wanted?" Derek stood up so fast, the chair scraped the floor. He didn't yell. He said, low and calm, "Diane, leave this room right now." She blinked. "Excuse me? That's my daughter." "Then act like her mother," he said, "because you're the reason she's here. Have you ever seen someone get hit with truth so hard they physically step backward? That's what Diane did. And for half a second something flickered across her face, almost like shame. But Diane doesn't do shame." She turned to me. "You're going to let him talk to me like that?" And I said, from my hospital bed, with an IV in my arm, "He said what I've been trying to say for 26 years. You just never listened when it came from me." She left. "No slem. No sheen." But I noticed her shoulders drop as she walked out. I filed that away. Derek looked at me and said, "Cincinnati is looking real good right now." I actually laughed. A real one. 2 days later, I was discharged. Derek had already found a rental. Little 3-bedroom outside Cincinnati. Nothing fancy, but it had a porch and a backyard, and it was 2 hours away from Diane's spare key. He'd handled everything while I recovered. Movers, lease, utilities, like a military operation. We left Columbus on a Tuesday morning. I didn't tell Mom, didn't tell Brenda, told Nana Ruth, and she said, "Good, stop in Dayton on your way." I made pie. She held Lily for the first time in her kitchen, with flour still on her apron, looked at my daughter and said, "She's got your stubbornness, I can already tell." Then she looked at me. "Your daddy would be so proud, baby girl." I nearly fell apart over peach pie. The first month in Cincinnati was beautifully boring. Derek transferred to his company's local branch. I focused on Lily, on sleeping, on eating real meals, on going a whole day without my stomach clenching when my phone buzzed. Nana Ruth visited twice, 81 years old, on a Greyhound bus. Can you imagine? She'd hold Lily and tell stories about my dad when he was little. And Diane, 3 weeks of silence. Then, one night, "I heard you moved away." I didn't respond. A week later, Nana Ruth showed me a picture of Lily. "She looks like your father. Do you see what was happening?" I didn't at first. I was so used to Diane, the guilt machine, that I didn't recognize these for what they were. They weren't attacks. They were attempts. Clumsy, imperfect attempts. Derek saw it before me. He said, "I think your mom is trying, Caro. She's just terrible at it." 2 months in, Brenda called, and this one stunned me. No accusation. No demand. She said, "I think I owe you an apology." I checked my screen to make sure it was actually Brenda. She told me Nana Ruth had called her. Didn't yell. Nana Ruth doesn't yell, but really talked to her. Told her things about how I'd felt growing up. Things I'd shared with Nana Ruth over the years. Brenda said, "I didn't realize I was taking from you my whole life. I thought that's just how our family worked." Honestly, that might be the truest thing she's ever said. I didn't forgive her on the spot. But I said, "Thank you for saying that." And I meant it. Then the call that changed everything. 3 months after we moved. Saturday morning. Derek making pancakes. Lily staring at the ceiling fan like it's the greatest invention ever. My phone rang. Diane. I almost didn't answer. But I did. She was crying. Not the manipulative kind. This was raw. Ugly. Barely coherent. She said, "I went to see Nana Ruth. I sat down, and she told me everything I've done to you. She had a list, Caroline, going back to when you were little, and I sat there listening. And her voice broke. I didn't know I was that person. I stood in my kitchen, holding the phone with both hands, tears on my face, pancakes burning because Derek had stopped flipping. She said, "I'm not asking you to forgive me now, but I need you to know I finally see it." Nana Ruth, 81 years old, peach pie baker, greyhound rider, quiet warrior. She held up the mirror and didn't let Diane look away. She did in one conversation what I couldn't do in 26 years. I said, "Okay, Mom. So, because you can't unpack 26 years in one phone call, no matter how many tears there are, right?" But something cracked open, like a door painted shut for years, finally letting in a sliver of light. Diane started therapy, which, if you knew my mother, that's like her climbing Everest. Brenda and I started texting. Nothing deep. She sent pictures of her kids. I sent videos of Lily rolling over. Thanksgiving. We drove to Dayton. Nana Ruth's house. 2 extra cars in the driveway. Diane's and Brenda's. I looked at Derek. He squeezed my hand. Diane met me in the hallway. She looked different. Smaller. Softer. No big speech. She just said, "Can I hold my granddaughter?" I placed Lily in her arms, and I watched my mother look at my daughter with the expression I'd wanted my whole life, like she was enough. Nana Ruth caught my eye from the kitchen and gave me a tiny nod. Just a nod, but it said everything. Dinner was awkward and imperfect and real. Brenda passed me the rolls without being asked, which sounds small, but wasn't. Diane barely ate because she couldn't stop staring at Lily. Derek and Nana Ruth argued about football. Are we perfect now? Diane still says the wrong thing sometimes. I still flinch when my phone says Mom. Maybe I always will. But we're trying. All of us. Nana Ruth told me that night, on her porch, "Families aren't built once, Caroline. They break, and you build them again. Sometimes better." Lily's almost 8 months old. We're still in Cincinnati. And every Sunday, at exactly 2, my phone rings. Nana Ruth. First thing she says, "How are my girls?" And for the first time in my life, when I say, "We're good, Nana," I mean it. So that's my story. If you're the Caroline in your family, the one who gives everything and never gets seen, standing up for yourself doesn't make you the villain, even when they say it does. If you enjoyed this, leave a like. It means more than you know. And if you would have handled things differently, tell me in the comments. I want to hear your take. Every family is different. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying for the whole thing. Now go call your grandma. Seriously.